just staring at the camera. I presume that, professional presenters in TV stations have that moment all the time where they're just sitting there going, I feel
Rolling.
like an idiot. Yeah. At least I have somebody saying three, two, one. But hey,
Uh, there you go. I could say 3, 2, 1 next time if you want. But
no, it's okay,
anyway,
man.
good morning or
Good.
good afternoon in London there. How are you,
Yeah,
sir?
and good morning in Seattle. Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Yes, and looking forward to today's topic, all about online courses.
Yeah.
Very, yeah, still something that excites me. I've created one. You've created what, at least 10, maybe 11. It depends how you count, I guess, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So this,
Yeah.
you're the man to teach about this, and I really feel this is such a neglected area for so many people who build up such an expertise about a particular type of client or customer
Hmm.
over decades sometimes, but they don't
Yeah.
really exploit it outside of the physical products realm. And so really, really love this topic and looking forward to discussing it.
Yeah, likewise. This is a fun one. And I hope it unlocks some ideas and thinking for people who watch and listen, and it would really spurs them on to taking next steps in exciting ways. And I hope make a good, solid case for why, everyone should try to unlock their potential to teach others. And so hopefully we have a fun conversation,
Yeah.
and we'll go from there. So if you're joining us live, hello, good morning or good afternoon, wherever you're dialing in from. We're honored to have you jump on live with us. We'd love to have you participate in the conversation today. We're going to record the live podcast here in just a couple minutes, but give us a shout out, say hello, say where you're listening from, hanging out from, and we'd love to introduce your comments or questions into the podcast and have you shape the dialogue. We'd really love to hear from you as we record, and so feel free to leave a chat comment underneath wherever you're watching live. I love having the reality of the conversation we woven together with live audience, live participants. It just makes the conversation much more vibrant. So please feel free to ask questions. If we'll even prompt you at a couple points, I think, today to ask some questions along the way, and it'll be a fun time together. So,
Excellent. Sounds good.
yeah.
Yeah. Do you comment away, guys? But I guess if we haven't got any particular comments at this stage, shall we plunge into recording the show?
Shall we do this? Are we ready
Yeah,
for this?
I
All
think
right.
so.
Well, let's, and thank you. A lot of people just jumped in a moment ago. So love to have you participate in the conversation today. Ask us questions along the way. Give us a shout out, say hello, and where you're listening from. We're going to include you in this podcast more than we do, I guess, maybe in the past, or more than we have in the past. And so say hello, and we'll get into it here just momentarily. All right.
Excellent.
So let's kick it off. We're going to record the podcast here.
And I just
And
double
yeah.
check you're doing the intro on this one, I'm presuming, because you're the expert. Excellent. Just
Yes,
checking.
sir. Yes, sir. Okay, here we go. Are you maximizing your potential to make money? If you know how to do something and you can teach it to others for fun and profit, and you're not doing that, then you're leaving money on the table. In this episode, we're going to discuss how to unlock your income generating potential through online courses and teaching others skills that you know. Michael, you ready to jump into this fun one?
100%. Yeah, this is such a great topic. Absolutely.
Great. Well, it's a fun time, and I think that we've all had different experiences with teaching others, and we'd love to ask our audience today to jump in with us, and you're listening live with us for a reason. We'd love to ask you to just ask us any questions you have about teaching online, or share some fears that you have or frustrations that you have about maybe doing it, or things that you feel like are barriers, and we'll talk through those today in the conversation.
Sounds good. Now, I've got to mention, obviously, we're talking generally unlocking your potential to teach other people, but more specifically, I guess today, online courses. So you've written, what, over 10 books? There are a lot of bestsellers. You've got over, what is it, 37,000 students on Udemy now for your courses, something like that?
Yeah.
It's a huge number anyway, and it keeps going up every time we talk about it as well. So I know you're in multiple languages around the world. So obviously you're a real master of creating a bit of an information empire. So yeah, how do we even get our hands around this big topic? Because even if we focus in on online courses, that's still a
Yeah.
big topic. What's the
Yeah.
starting point for your thinking about this stuff?
Well, I'm a pragmatist, I guess, and just think through these things as sort of just, I don't know. The way I look at it is um, kind of like this. I heard Malcolm Gladwell recently do a talk, and he asked this interesting question. It was sort of the thesis behind his book Outliers. He asked this question: are we good at capitalizing on human potential. And he was asking it in the abstract in his talk at Microsoft. And as I was listening to it, I thought, okay, that's interesting premise for a book, but really the question could be applied to us personally. Am I maximizing my potential for earning and for making money? Are you, Michael, maximizing it? Are each of us listening to this conversation, are we maximizing our ability to make money? And obviously, as entrepreneurs, as people who are starting their own business, trying to spin up or grow online income, one of the questions is there an opportunity to unlock there for making incremental dollars through teaching others? And I think that's a compelling place to start. And just asking that question, and because it sort of has a derivative set of questions that follow on. Like the first one is, um, how well am I doing at capitalizing on my talents or on what I know how to do? Second question would be, how much money and success could I have from that? What's possible there? Um, and then the third question is, what impact would that have on me and my business and my life, and on the students involved in learning? And I think those questions are really valuable and really important place to start. It's almost like just saying, what's the full opportunity for you to, use your gifts and talents to make money? And if you're in the Amazon business right now, that's one aspect of your ability to make money. But there are these other abilities that I think are critically important as well. So I guess that's where I'd start the conversation.
Yeah, I like those questions. So just to reiterate, how well do you capitalize your own talent? What were the other questions?
How much money and success would you have if you unlocked your incremental income from teaching? So, how much how well would you do with it? And then what impact would that have
Hmm.
on your own life and the life of others? Yeah.
Good questions. I mean,
Yeah.
I think for me, coming back to the core listener, the e-commerce, mostly probably physical product seller that's listening or
Yeah.
probably listening. Um, One of the things that strikes me is, especially in the Amazon space, but not only, there's a lot of bad reputation that seems to go with online courses and things. And
Hmm.
one thing that
Yeah.
strikes me immediately is, like, if you've built a legitimate business and you really know what you're doing, maybe you kind of owe it to the people out there to tell them something
Hmm.
useful and truthful in your perception, if you perceive that there's exaggerated or untruthful marketing out there. So
Yeah.
there are two ways to react to it, right? I mean, I think one mental barrier to overcome is, I don't want to be one of those people. And the other one is, what about if I actually taught people some really great stuff about, grounded in years of hard work and
Hmm.
success?
Hmm.
So I guess I'm saying that for the cynical listeners who are thinking, oh, I don't want to be one of those guys. Well, why not be the good person who actually helps people, as you say,
Yeah.
impacts other people's lives and as well in an honest, positive way, as indeed you do.
Well, totally right. I mean, I think the social good that can happen from teaching others is super important to think about. I'm positioning this as sort of a money opportunity. You're expressing it as a social good. Both are true,
Hmm.
and or can be true, and both can
Yeah,
be
can be true. Yeah,
both can be correct as well. You can
yeah,
make no money, and you can not help anyone,
yeah,
um, and so those are
yeah.
sad realities. But I
Let's do
think,
the opposite.
yeah,
Yeah,
if you get the combo right, if you're
yeah,
helpful and it's monetized well, then it's a win-win for everybody involved. You teach good things and you make a profit doing it. So let's
100%.
use that suggested framework as the outcome. Yeah.
That sounds like a fantastic outcome. Okay, so how do we go about that then? You've obviously done this multiple times. So what's your sort of framework for creating courses?
Yeah. Right. It's a relatively simple set of steps that at first blush, it looks like a short and simple list, but there's nuance and complexity in it. So I'll just mention that, the three steps in my mind as I think about creating or, opportunities to unlock your teaching. Number one, identify your unique abilities and outline your knowledge. Number two, identify the best platforms or modalities. And number three, reinvest your proceeds. So a very short list of to-dos there.
Yeah.
It's intellectual work, but it is incredibly valuable, or can be at least. So we happy to break these down, but those are the short steps. So,
Yeah, I mean, that does sound kind of alarmingly simple. So yeah, let's get into that first one. Identify your unique ability and outline your knowledge. I mean, obviously,
yeah.
Kind of sounds simple, but I guess it's obviously not, because when I don't know how many people listening have tried to do this, but I've certainly done this multiple times now. And sitting down outlining things,
Hmm.
it's kind of the problem of too much, isn't it? I mean, I could kind
Yeah.
of teach people about driving a car, but I guess I wouldn't be that valuable, given that millions of people can do it already. But then, is it? I
Yep.
don't know. And then you start questioning yourself. So how do you get a handle on that very big topic?
Well, I think it starts within your unique abilities and your unique interest, enthusiasms, passion for a topic. You want to lean into what you already have as a strength. And that's the place to start. Don't chase opportunity. Don't go after something you think will be popular, even though you don't know anything about it. Go for something that you have as a core trade skill that you would say, oh, I could teach. I could teach anybody this because I'm, competent at it. I've done it for a long time, and that's the first thing. The phrase "unique ability" is, I guess, popularized by Dan Sullivan, a really, really, successful coach, a coach of coaches, really. Strategic Coach is his program name, and he talks all about this idea of finding that set of behaviors or actions that you're uniquely good at with either your natural giftings or your ability gained over many, many long years of toil. You either come by it naturally, or you just grind it out and you perfect a gift over time, and or both.
Hmm.
And get good at something. And I think that's the really important thing to think through is, how do you get that clarity in your own heart and mind about what you are good at. And you might say to yourself, well, I'm good at a few things that aren't really that popular,
Hmm.
or that aren't really that kind of commercially interesting to a lot of people. Uh, the internet's a big place. You'd be surprised. It wouldn't take very much for 100 people to be aggregated together to learn a specific topic, or 1,000 people.
Hmm.
And that's really the exercise involved. And so that's the first piece, is unique ability. The second piece that I have here in the notes is outline your knowledge. Outline your knowledge. I think the trade skill of real trade skills here is to get very good at outlining and condensing and synthesizing information. And the only thing I just suggest to people is get journals and get in the habit of, like, this is my this journal is ridiculous. This is from Barnes and Noble. This is like, I don't even know what it is. It's like 15 inches tall. And I'm holding it up for those that are watching us live. It's a massive journal, and all I do, this is one of my journals. All I do is just outline, outline, outline. And if I watch a show, if I read a book, whatever, I'd love to just kind of outline what is this person saying? What are the steps involved? And I'm literally a pile of journals next to me here. And I think that the synthesis is the basis of a good teaching practice. And so I would just encourage people to get in the habit of that. And if you already do that, then you already have a gold mine of synthesized knowledge that you can just say, hey, there's 6 steps to this. Hey, did you know that so-and-so always does 4 steps every time he does this? Hey, did you know that Amazon wants you to do the following 5 things? Hey, did you know that for podcast success, you really just need to do 46 different things, or whatever it
46
is?
steps. Yeah, that popular 46-step framework. But
Yeah.
joking apart, I really love that. It's great to see the workings of your mind, dude, on that notebook. Never seen that before. Obviously, if you're listening to
Yeah.
the audio podcast, I mean, it's just
Yeah.
a handwritten series of steps in a giant journal over a foot high. That's very, very cool. So I guess what you're
Yeah.
saying is that it comes down to a habit of thinking and a habit of analysis and documentation, but in
Yeah.
the way that you have of simplifying
Yeah.
things. When we write outlines,
Yeah.
I have a habit of writing outlines for the podcast that are sort of 12
Yeah.
12 steps, and each one's got step 12A, 12B. Maybe it
Yeah.
comes from my dad's lawyer genes, and you tend to
Yeah.
simplify it right down, which I think is absolutely the right way to communicate better.
Yeah.
And this is
For
one of your other
those,
journals. Wow.
I guess I'm doing a show and tell for journals. For those who are watching us live with us, this is my smallest journal, and this I've had for probably 15 years. It is a unique journal for me, and you can see in my, like, oh, my ridiculous notes. Like, how can that many post-it notes in a book be helpful? But this little journal, what I started doing was I would write down quotes that I thought were incredibly valuable or meaningful. And so it's gone back a long way now. And I would only do like the best ones. And little lists like, okay, purchasing power. There are 5 steps to purchasing power. That's on that page. The next page, leveraging earned income to create passive and portfolio income. And there's a little chart. Like all of these little ideas and snippets, I would just document and journal. And I've referred to this thing more times than you can imagine. And so I guess that's the idea here that I'm suggesting everybody start to take. And it's good for you anyway, just to learn stuff, but it really creates a powerful toolkit for teaching.
Amazing. I love this very much. I just had no idea that that was how you operated despite our many conversations. So this is
Oh,
revelation to me. Fascinating stuff.
there you
Bit of
go.
a look inside the creative process. Reminds me of back in the day, my classical world. I mean, Beethoven was famous for going walking with notebooks and he'd stop and scribble down ideas. And Duke Ellington also apparently said to some guy who said, like, when somebody come up with those music ideas, those ones you write down straight away because they're very valuable. So they recognize the
Hmm.
value of ideas. Interesting.
Yeah.
So tell me a bit about this. The next piece then that we haven't talked about is really, I suppose we talked about a lot of things with physical product development last time we spoke. And one of the things was try and stick to what you understand and have good, industry
Hmm.
craft knowledge, if you like, as you've said the same thing. But one of the things that I have tended to do and have, I guess maybe this is good and maybe this is over analysis, is looking at the keyword research. And then I've often
Oh.
managed to get to the
Hmm.
point from maybe 15 years ago, I started thinking
Hmm.
about creating some kind of, training type, information type products.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I'd look at the keyword research and I'd say, oh, other people are doing this stuff, or it doesn't look powerful enough, or who am I to
Hmm.
do this stuff? So, where is the line between legitimate keyword research and sort of head trash, and how do you differentiate that?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly valuable to do some of that work as you take this next step, which is now that you've got tons of ideas and things that you've aggregated and you know your unique abilities. The question, of course, is what is a hungry market out there available, to consume the information? And all things being equal, if there are 10 topic angles or 10 associated ideas related to a trade skill, you do want to find the nuance in it as best you can and to find what the key phrases are people are searching for, the terms they use. Those types of things can be incredibly helpful. So, I mean, I think when it comes down to actually taking this step towards course production, the keyword research, particularly for phrases and terms, our funny little thing we always say in this podcast is we're the number one podcast on Spotify if you use the E or the dash between the E and the C. Well, if you don't use the dash between the E and the C in e-commerce, then we're not number one. Well, that's key phrase research and understanding what people typically type into, these marketplaces and online tools, and that is important. I mean, that it does help polish the opportunity. Um, I think all things being equal, that's a nuance that's important to make incremental success occur. Um, the bigger topic is probably just what is the topic, the trade skill yourself that you're teaching, and is that trendy, of interest or not? And I would just say, um, you learn your way through that as you go. Um, for the first 3 books I wrote with McGraw-Hill, they were all about social media, and after each one, I was like, I wrote a book. It's at Barnes and Noble. It's being translated around the world, and and but social media wasn't the thing that I was really passionate about. I was passionate about small business and growing business. I was passionate about the general marketing. Social media was just one angle that I had a voice to speak into, I guess. But what I realized that over time, as I went to the conferences, I'd be asked to speak at a conference occasionally. It was not like I was a big in demand thing. But when I'd go there, I was like, I'm not sure these are my people. These are all 22-year-old social media managers, and where's the boss? Like, where's the business owner? Where's the guy or gal who started the business and who was trying to make it a success? I want to talk to that person. And so, you find over time not only what the online community wants, you also find what you want to teach and who you want to, I guess, be a hero to, as Dan Sullivan says, but who you want to work with. And that's a learning and discovery process as well.
Interesting that It feels less keyword driven, sort of intellectually kind of, what's the word, process driven than I was kind of expecting, really. And I guess the thing that's different between ordering your own unique products, as we talked about yesterday, when you might spend 6, 9 months, $10,000, $20,000 with your first sort of serious order,
Yeah.
versus creating a course. Of course, it's going to take time and effort, but I
Yeah.
suppose you can afford to literally afford, as in financially, to make a few sort of stumbles and kind of find your way to getting a match between who you are and what you offer and what you care
Hmm.
about,
Yeah.
and the market. Is that fair, or is it more structured than that, or is it really a kind of piecemeal process?
It's totally fair, and I think that every person who thinks about doing, unlocking their ability to teach, should think of it like a catalog business. Think of it like not a one-time life-changing course that you're going to launch and then the rest will be history. Think of it more like you're a Sunday school teacher, and the next Sunday's coming, and you've got to have something to share. And so think of it more like a catalog where you're going to build over time, topic number one, topic number two, topic number three, and you'll find your way forward. If you treat it as a one and done and you hope to monetize it on it as a one and done, you either will be very unhappy with the outcome, you'll be moderately happy, or you'll be extremely happy, but chances are you'll be unhappy with the outcome. But if you say, I'm going to do this 10 times in the next 10 years and get better at it each time, then you'll find your way forward for both the content and for how to do all the work involved.
This is really excellent advice. I can say, as a sort of crash test dummy of the kind of danger of creating a life-changing single giant course, that I've
Yeah.
done that. I mean,
Hmm.
I I guess I emulated the courses that I'd personally taken, which would solve
Yeah.
for a lot of money back in the day, and in retrospect, were just a bit crazily unwieldy, because it forces
Hmm.
you as a student to put all your faith in one person because you spent so much money in
Hmm.
one place, which is not healthy. But also, as the creator, what I'd done is create a monster, and I just about enough people go through the course to look at the completion stats, and I think,
Yeah.
2 or 3 people out of maybe 100 that took the course managed to get 50% of the course done.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not a good statistic, because there was just too much. So, like 300 videos. It was just
Yeah.
the most complete Amazon course in the world. But I mean, what I should have done in retrospect is break it into multiple smaller courses
Yeah.
geared to people with different needs. And it's kind of easy to say now, looking back. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what I've been in the process of doing, is kind of starting to create courses, modes of interaction that really focus on more specific needs. But it's taken me a long time to get to that. I guess because
Well,
it's
yeah.
hard to let go of the model you learn initially. Maybe that's what
That's
it
what I
is.
was going to say, is you were modeled something that
Hmm.
you replicated, and it was a
Yeah.
big, massive course that cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
Obviously, podcasting is just the opposite. It's
Yes.
free to listeners,
Yeah.
and it is a micro, topics broken down. And so, yeah, I do think that that's part of it, is learning your way forward through that. So there you go. I mean, hopefully this is helpful so far. And I would just say, if you're listening to this, give us a shout out, say hello if you're listening live with us as we record this. And love to have you throw in to the chat what your unique ability or skill is that you think you could teach on. You don't have to go into detail. Just maybe say the broad topic. I'm good at the following. So feel free to leave a comment underneath wherever you're watching this live with us, and we'll weave that into the topics and conversation here. So,
Sounds good. And I
no.
would say, for anyone who's listening to the podcast as well, that you could do the same thing. I mean, just
Hmm.
whatever you're doing, if you're driving, don't do this. But,
Yeah.
once you've got a moment to sit down with a piece of paper and just make that same
Yeah.
list, would be
Yeah.
very valuable, I think.
Yeah.
Good. So you mentioned platforms. Obviously, I sort of kind
Hmm.
of took us on a bit of a ride down the path of the idea of getting the perfect kind of course, and I guess through painful amounts of
Hmm.
keyword research. And actually, it turns out you don't need to have that mentality. But nevertheless, like you mentioned, that the different platforms have different supply and demand on. So how
Hmm.
do we even decide which of the many options to go for?
Yeah, I think that's just an amazing place we're in right now, with so many, uh, publishing opportunities that exist now, and there's more coming up all the time. And so I think it breaks down along a few lines, sort of your own behavioral lines. Are you comfortable being on video? Or are you comfortable speaking, or are you comfortable writing? Which of those three? And if you say, I hate all of those, then might have some problems. But if you say, well, I really don't mind talking to people, but I'm not comfortable on camera, well, then there you go. Podcasting could be an opportunity for you. Or if you say, no, I just like to write, I don't want to really be live with anyone, or that kind of thing, well, then maybe ebooks are an opportunity. So the modalities is what I call it in terms of publishing, and then the platforms, and they kind of are linked hand in hand. But let's just talk through some of the platforms first. There are, I think, what you would call sort of self-managed tools that you kind of just do whatever you want on. And then there are hosted or managed tools that you kind of have to go through hurdles to be a part of. So the self-managed tools are like YouTube channel. Anyone can start one. You can just boot it up and start doing videos. Kajabi, you can create your own Kajabi site and start doing courses and publishing that way. Teachable platform. You can create your own course on Teachable, and you're completely in charge of what's there. So those self-managed, do whatever you want kind of tools are available. And then there are hosted or managed systems that are available to us. And so the hosted systems are things like Udemy, which you mentioned. I think I have 37,000 students over that amount now on Udemy. But other sites like Skillshare, and these are all sites that are to some degree gated, I guess you could say. You have to get something approved on them. Kindle Direct Publishing, for Amazon, I guess, is somewhere in between where it's just loosely gated. Like, you can put pretty much anything in an ebook that's not dangerous or whatever. But you still have to go through a process to publish, and the customers, of course, on Amazon are their customers, not yours. So you start to learn over time. Okay, what are the platforms available to me, and which ones do I like or dislike the most? They all have pros and cons, and they all have a degree of complexity that you have to learn. But the beautiful part is, just go to YouTube or Udemy and search for what you're trying to do. I want to publish an ebook. I want to create a class on Teachable. I want to create a podcast, whatever it is. And the expert will emerge, and their step-by-step guide will walk you through how to do those platforms. And so I think that's sort of the first question. If you had to ask me my opinion, I would say it depends. So it's not really helpful for me to rank order my favorites, because it would just be unique to me. Michael, you probably have a list that is unique to you as well, but we all have to come up with our own unique list. Yeah.
Yeah, that does make sense in terms of the individual platforms, and obviously we have our sort of favorites. I mean, I just love podcasting as a social media sort of channel, and I guess it's not traditionally a paid medium, although it can be. It's not common,
Yeah.
but yeah, somewhere like YouTube, again, traditionally not paid, but it can be.
Yep.
But one question that seems fairly fundamental to me is whether, as a as an Amazon seller of physical products and versus the Shopify angle where you own the customers, I mean, that does seem a profound differentiation to me. So
It does.
you're an interesting case in that you sell physical, well, your e-commerce products, actually also digital downloads, of course,
Mm-hmm.
on your own site, but that you publish on Amazon's platform, and that you've done your courses on Udemy's platform.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me what your thinking is behind that choice. Why not? Why did you not, for example, go down a self-hosted route where you'd have control over the customer relationship for your courses?
There's a real tension on sort of a spectrum in this regard. And on the one end of the spectrum, it's like you have all the data, like you know everything about who's buying and all that. It's great. That's beautiful. But the other end of the spectrum is you don't have any of the data, but there's a huge marketplace that exists. And so if you set up your own Teachable course and create whatever you want on your website and have it there, you have literally zero visibility, zero eyeballs, zero traffic. Amazon, on the other hand, has basically all the traffic in the world. And so that's the tension point. So yes, you can collect all your own data and make your own pricing decisions and make your own money on your own website. And so inherent in doing that is your need to do marketing. And so there's this kind of spectrum of, okay, what makes most sense? Go on Amazon where all the eyeballs are and a built-in marketplace, but you don't have the data, or publish on your own site. And as I've already mentioned, if you approach this as a catalog business, then you say to yourself, the answer isn't either or, the answer is both and. So you use these platforms as appropriate. and create, um, stuff for Amazon, and for the marketplaces like Udemy. And then you can create stuff on your own website if you're willing to do the marketing, and if you're willing to spend time and energy, and over time grow a business that is direct to consumer. And so, that's the trade-off and set of tension points. And you just have to find your way forward and navigate through that spectrum. Yeah.
So if we had to simplify it down grossly for somebody who hasn't started a information type business yet, but they have experience with physical products, so probably quite a few people listening, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Where would you advise people to start if you had to choose between not a specific
Hmm.
platform, but between self-hosted
Yep.
versus on an existing marketplace like Udemy?
I would encourage them to start on a marketplace like Udemy, um, or KDP, Kindle, publishing for ebooks, that kind of thing. I would go to a marketplace first. Yeah, for sure. And then learn over time. Do you like this? Do you like teaching? Is it fun? Is it exciting? Is it energizing? Do you feel like you're getting some momentum forward, and then build from there? Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. And what I guess I like about it is, as we've discussed with the physical product creation from scratch in the past, that if there are lots of moving parts to these things, so it's bad enough trying to create a course, or it's complex enough, shall we say, maybe exciting, but also have its
Hmm.
its doubt points, I guess.
Hmm.
And one of the things I guess you can bypass is the need to worry about building traffic sources and conversion rates and all that, because Udemy
Yeah.
is doing it for you for
Right.
courses, or Amazon's doing it for books. So
Yeah.
that does make sense. Okay, very, very interesting. So now we've got another huge area of questionings having, as you suggested, that you may be doing video courses, you may be doing books. So those are a couple
Hmm.
of forms that the teaching can actually take. But tell us a bit more about your thinking about how do we actually express our help
Yeah, I
people.
call those the modalities of the content. What modality is it in? I don't know if that's the right word or not, but it just makes sense in my mind. So that means, is it a video based teaching? Is it a webinar where you kind of use PowerPoint and, kind of voice over PowerPoint? Is it a ebook? Is it a ebook and the companion paperback and or companion audiobook, like, how the kind of trifecta on Amazon? Is it group coaching or one-on-one coaching? Is it free YouTube videos? Is it a podcast? There's so many modalities. And again, this goes back to sort of what you're most comfortable with. If you're most comfortable um, with conversation, then maybe podcasting is the way to go. Um, if you're most comfortable writing your thoughts out and working on it, refining it before anybody sees it, maybe writing is the way to go. And maybe if you like video, but you want it to be structured, then you do sort of the webinar format where you've got, like, slide 1, slide 2, slide 3, and you can talk through it, but you're still kind of, on camera. And so these modalities are just the fielder's choice here. It depends on what your personality is and which one you're most comfortable with. And I think over time, what we do as educators is we do one that we're most comfortable with, and then we try the next one, and we end up over time getting comfortable with each of these modalities, and we find the ones that work best for us, for our audience, and for growing our followership, our listeners or readers, our viewers, and go from there.
So I
Yeah.
guess what you're saying is start with kind of your comfort zone, and
Hmm.
then over time you're going to develop more modalities anyway
Hmm.
by necessity. Is that
And it's horses
more
for
or less?
courses. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
there's so many options. It's kind of like what suits you best.
Hmm.
Like in Are You a Mudder, which is the old Seinfeld joke, right? The horse that runs good in mud, I guess. I don't know. But, are you good, better at writing where you have iterative process or not? Or are you better at just impromptu conversation?
Hmm.
And there you go. So that's the thing to start to narrow down on. And once you say, oh, well, I'm most comfortable with this, so I'm going to learn how to do it uh, as best I can.
It's interesting. I was reflecting. I think I was reading a book by Neil Strauss, who wrote The Game. So don't judge me. He's now kind of moved out of that. But very interesting writer and thinker. He just happened to be in a pretty ghastly field for a while, which thank goodness he's moved out of. But he said that whenever he interviewed somebody, because he was a writer for some a paper out in the LA, I think. He
Hmm.
said whenever he wrote interviewed somebody who just could not stop talking in vast amounts, they were basically either on drugs or a writer, which is interesting. So somebody's very, very detail
That's
oriented.
funny.
The way I write outlines for podcasts
Yeah.
indicates to me that I should be thinking about writing a book because I'm just
Hmm.
too detail oriented. So sometimes you've got to know yourself a bit, haven't you, and get a hint
Hmm.
about you may be doing
Hmm.
A, but B
Yeah.
is calling. And in my case, I guess that's books for sure. But
Yeah.
the other thing that strikes me is that there's a huge and really unsubtle price point difference in expectation and at reality price point, but between books and video courses particularly. So books generally seem to sell for
Yeah.
pretty modest amounts, and video courses traditionally go for anywhere between $200 and even up to 2,000 if you can really push it on your own site. So what are your thoughts about that? Does that push you in a particular direction, or do you think that's the lure of fool's gold?
I think there's a lot of various opportunity depending on what you want to do. There are people who have monetized YouTube channels that are rich, and they just make YouTube videos and upload them, and they don't worry about any of the financial details. They don't worry about price points or anything. They just make content, just put it on YouTube, and they're educators in their own right. And so, it's deceptively simple that way. There are other people, of course, who do a lot of videos on YouTube and it goes nowhere. So, uh, it is a fundamental question. I think there's a very, you know, unique set of opportunities for all of us as educators to play with the different ideas. And, you can make a $5,000 course and you can get people to buy it. You can also get rich making content for free. It's just such it's like, what do you make of that? It's just like, there's just many paths. And the question is, do you understand the monetization strategy behind each one?
Yeah.
And, if you're going to go for amazingly good content on YouTube that you give away for free, you understand, of course, the monetization of that on the back end through the YouTube ad, system, and what that would mean for you. And if you want to sell ebooks through KDP or paperback, you understand what the monetization system means, and you learn these things over time. And I would just say, again, like my mantra is, treat this like a catalog business where you do one thing and you try it and like, oh, I made fill in the amount. You try a different thing and you say, oh, I made a different amount. Maybe it's more, maybe it's less. And over, two or three or four projects, what you'll come to realize is there are things that you can do that are more profitable than others, and you find your way forward. And so there's no one perfect answer. I think what is really, really important is to get good at your trade craft as best you can. Are you helpful? Do people enjoy your content? Is it witty and interesting? And do people want to pick it up and jump into it with you? And those components are the root of the profitability. And so, I mean, I think that's the most important thing to think about. You think of someone like, Malcolm Gladwell, who is uh, just an insanely good author. And you ask yourself the question, how is he different than Jason Miles, author who's maybe, let's be honest, I mean, not nearly as popular in any way, shape, or form. It does come down to tradecraft. And so, I think, to me, at the end of the day, this is about challenging yourself to get better at something, and being realistic with yourself about saying, well, I might be average at this, but man, I'm going to try 10 times in a row until I can get from, C in grade schools grades to C plus. And then maybe I can get from C plus to B minus. And that's how I like to look at it, and with an honesty about the level at which you're operating, but then the desire to improve upon it over time. So hopefully that helps a little. I don't know if I went off on a tangent there, but
No, not at all. I think this is all really helpful. I mean, the one thing that stands out to me so much with the word treat it like a catalog business, really the same advice you'd give anyone selling physical products on a
yeah,
store, whether it's on Amazon or your own store.
yeah,
Very, very interesting that actually there's such a big overlap, which makes me
yeah,
think that one of the things you've said before, and I think it's worth just reiterating, that you've had success with your clients doing this. This isn't something I've tried to teach yet, but
hmm,
that really the division is artificial anyway, that people with physical products,
hmm,
stores, especially their own like Shopify, but probably not limited, really should be looking into adding physical products, digital products, which we've talked about
Yeah.
separately before, but let's just tie that in. So that the word catalog is the crossover for me. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts?
Well, if you think about it in reality, if you pull up your phone and you tap on 2 or 3 or 4 buttons and you've gotten something, tell me whether that was a digital product or a physical product right now. I mean, you
Very
can't.
good question. Yeah, it's no difference. People buy
There's
digital products essentially, whether
people
they,
buy
yeah,
the buying process is
yeah,
exactly the same.
you're right. You're
I mean,
absolutely right.
like Cinnamon, we were driving to see the new Avengers movie yesterday, and I told her I'm trying to do a computer project, and I said let's just buy this on Amazon. So she looked on her phone on Amazon, bought me a couple things with literally 2 taps, and it's going to be delivered today to our house. And I just said to her, that is just so amazing. But that could have been an information product just as easy. And so in actual reality, the e-commerce business has digitized the whole entire thing. And so there is no distinction for customers between a digital good and a physical good in terms of the buying and process and all that. It's an artificial barrier we're putting in our mind when we, as the business owner or marketer or product manager, say to ourselves, I'm not in the digital goods space. That is an arbitrary distinction that we would be, I think, very smart to jam together with, what we're really doing, which is just selling stuff.
Just selling stuff. I like it.
Yeah.
This is a great insight. I mean, I suppose that would encourage anyone who's listening, who's saying, why am I bothering to listen to this apart from, I subscribed
Yeah.
to Jason and Michael a while ago, but I sell physical goods. Why is this relevant?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess you just had your answer
Yeah.
that everyone's buying digital goods, and sometimes the delivery pathway is digital, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes a guy
It's
turns up
physical.
at your door from UPS. So
It's really
fascinating
weird,
stuff.
isn't it, to think
It
about, but it's
is
so true.
it is
It's so
very
true.
weird. I mean, I
Yeah.
was saying to people, when people buy on Amazon, they're buying an offer. They're not buying the physical goods.
Right.
Yes, if your physical goods are lousy, you'll get a rubbish review, and that
Mm-hmm.
will affect the digital process. But really, what they're buying is a promise. They're buying
Yeah.
an offer. And to your point, I guess if the offer is then delivered in the form of something digital,
Yep.
from the marketing point of view, it's not really any different. I mean, the delivery is difficult, but as we've said already, I mean, physical products take a lot of money and have to travel around the world, so they're vulnerable to war and trade issues and physical capacity constraints. Whereas the digital products obviously not prone to those. So if nothing else, in 2021, when physical products are so challenging,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
it's worth taking this seriously all over again. So
Yeah.
the next thing we've got to talk about then, you mentioned as the third step, reinvesting your proceeds. I mean, that's quite a sort of grown-up conversation to have when if we haven't necessarily even sold a product yet, a digital product.
Yeah.
But
And
why is that in your list when it's sort of relatively early days for a lot of us?
well, there's a huge, I guess, mindset shift that will unlock here for people, I think, as they go through this. And hopefully I can describe it. But let me just say this. Let's say you make a course and or training. Let's say it's an hour training. It took you 10 hours to put it together. So your invested time in the project is 10 hours. What's your hourly rate?
I guess it depends entirely how much you sell it for, right?
Exactly.
And how
But
many you
not
sell.
only,
Yeah.
yes, but not only how much you sell it for and how many you sell, but for how long you're selling it. And so this idea of effective hourly rate for digital work or teaching content is insanely important to get clarity on. The effective hourly rate for a project on a physical product project on Amazon. Let's say you order 10,000 units of something and you sell them, and it took you a certain number of hours. You can calculate clearly what your hourly rate was for that work. Because let's just forecast it out, do a pro forma for that sales event, and you'd know how much. But that is not possible with teaching content because, for example, um, let's just use my courses on Udemy. On Udemy, I have 37,000 students. I think in total, I have 45,000 uh, you know, student entries. So some people have bought multiple courses. Um, and is that good or bad? I always think about numbers. So, okay, 37,000 people took one course, but only 45,000 in total, have gone through. So, man, is that, I don't know. That's so anyway. So in my mind, that's how I look at it. And, but, But the thing about it is, I didn't do any work on Udemy in the last year. In fact, I can't remember the last time I did any work on Udemy. And yet I get a distribution from them every month. So my effective hourly rate this month is I spent no hours. And so this idea of these digital content pieces being assets that you, in essence, are planting a seed that's a fruit tree that's giving you back a little. It's a little asset that is generating income for you. That is insanely important for you to think through. And I know a lot of people who have done a course once, and then if you ask them about it, they're like, "Well, I did a course. I only make $100 a month off of it, so it's like, but that's $1,200 a year, free money. And so that's a first important thing to think through, because even if the numbers are really small, I think this idea of reinvesting your earnings back into your education business is really, really valuable. So I just say that as sort of the first thing. And any thoughts on that before I go on to the second little tidbit here on this?
Yeah, I think effective hourly rate is something that people who are in the digital goods space or coaching, consulting are, if they're really well trained and they've listened to James Schramko, and in my case, very, very aware of. But I think it's something that everyone should be aware of. If you're selling and buying goods on Amazon and you're looking at the raw numbers, but you're working 80-hour weeks,
Mm-hmm.
there's something out of whack. You're not thinking about the value of your own time or even why you got into the water in the first place. As Dan Kennedy says, you get into the swamp, all you're aware of is staying away from the alligators, but you got in there to get to the other side, which is what? Probably,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully, working 20 hours a week for much
Mm-hmm.
more money than you were doing in your 40, 50, 60-hour a week work week in an office. So
Yeah.
I think it's a really great metric to bear in mind. And I love what you're saying. I mean, you work once and you get paid multiple times, and that stretches into a long enough horizon, then that suddenly becomes a lot of money per hour. And
Yeah.
it's a really great reason for doing it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's really, really good stuff. I like it a lot.
Okay, my next little nugget there in this idea is the metaphor here might be a stretch, but understand how long the fire will burn through the long, dark winter. And what I mean by that is understand how long your content will make you money without you doing anything further. And there are different degrees of success in that regard. The evergreen nature of the content, I guess, is the phrase you might use. There are famous authors who have written one book and lived their best life forever based on that outcome. That's just a reality for authors. But there are also people who have done courses that have done courses. They get installed, they get popular, they're there, and the income just continues to come in without them doing anything further. Now, there are other educators who do a training, and an hour later, it is of no value, and they have to go on to their next training, to their next event, to their next webinar or whatever it is. And so, understanding the long term nature of your content, or whether it does have long-term nature, is really valuable. And I think that's a really important insight and lesson. Some content and modalities are better than others in that regard. So,
Yeah, I think it's really important if you've got a skill in a sort of digital marketing space, for example, to really think through,
yeah,
because if you're doing something about Google SEO or Facebook SEO or whatever, I mean, imagine, for example, you were doing something about Facebook ads. And
yeah,
I know a lot of people who create content about Facebook ads, as I'm sure we both do. And I'm just thinking if they wrote a book in, I don't know, let's say December, or let's say they wrote it from July
hmm
through to September
hmm
2020, and they got it published in January 2021, the iOS updates probably invalidated a fair percentage of that book. I'm sure that the evergreen principles would be true, but to the extent that it's technical and sort
yeah,
of, depends on that, is going to need to be rewritten. So it does strike me as
yeah.
that's a really important piece to think through in terms of the topics that you tackle. And what's your approach to that personally?
I am not very smart at that stuff. Writing social media books is rather unwise if you think about it, because sadly, they're still on Amazon. And to be completely candid, when people buy my book from 2011 or 12, I don't know what their experience is going to be with my book. Now, the Pinterest Power book I wrote back then still has good, solid marketing tactics that still work. And I'm honored to be able to say that our Pinterest work is bigger than ever. And we've just done the same core thing that I taught in that book. So it's not horribly out of whack, but everything related to Pinterest is all dated. It just doesn't work the way it did back then. And so, yeah, that was not wise of me. And I just didn't think through that. Other authors or, educators are much wiser when they talk about universal principles like leadership, or something along those lines that are much more transcendent and long-term in nature. So I think that's important to think through. I do think that there is some interesting nuance here that I just, in my own reflections on these things, I'll just tell you that, like, one example that's blown my mind lately is I've always liked bonsai trees, and I've killed the ones I've ever owned. And why are you laughing? You're laughing at my...
It wasn't expecting you to go there, but this is really cool. Keep
Okay,
going.
let me show you this example. And
yeah.
Okay, so and if you're watching with us live, and so apologize for those who are not, but I'll just share my screen real quick for those who are watching live. Now, this guy who I'm sharing on the screen here, I just typed in bonsai into YouTube, and this guy's video, Transformation of a Japanese Large Bonsai. It was published a month ago. It has 1.4 million views. And this guy, Bonsai Relief, he only has 2 videos on YouTube. But his total view count is 4.8 million and 1.4 million, whatever that is together. He literally has 2 videos, and they have just dominated in terms of viewership. And he doesn't teach a single thing in those videos, like conversationally. It's not like here's how you clip up a bonsai and blah, blah, blah. It is simply him doing it, and he put music underneath it, and it's time lapse, and it's beautifully videography kind of content, put together, production value. And he's got whatever that is.
Over 6 million, 6.2 million or something. Yeah.
Views with 2 videos.
Yeah. Amazing.
And those videos, I can tell you, because I've watched both of them several times myself, those will be making him money on YouTube for years to come.
Yeah, because I guess bonsai is an ancient art, right? It's not going to change anytime.
What's going to change?
50 years, I guess.
What's going to change?
Yeah.
Now,
Super.
his videography, his editing, his music underscore might become dated, but not for years. And
nice.
So I think we need to think about what people want to see and how they want to learn. And his videos do have on-screen little phrases or words that pop up at certain times, but one's 22 minutes long, one's 18 minutes long. And so I think we need to think about this, what am I good at, and how can I monetize or teach others with it? We need to look at it broadly. It doesn't need to just be a boring webinar that's, packed with info about businessy junk stuff that only, weirdos like us like. It can be much broader than this,
Having said that, though, one person's meat is another one man's meat is another man's poison, as the bard said. So, I mean, obviously, bonsai is a fascination to you. I've never looked into it personally myself. I mean, I'm kind of intrigued now because I didn't know you were into that. I'm kind of intrigued because you are, but I mean, obviously, digital marketing for the right person is definitely intriguing. But what's interesting is that evergreen, to use a phrase, evergreen, literally in the case of bonsai trees, which has been around for hundreds of years, I'm guessing. I don't know much about that, but Japanese culture is very ancient, and the Zen kind of traditions come in versus digital marketing on Facebook, which might be out of date 6 months later, or exactly Pinterest or whatever it may be. So
isn't that smart? It is, isn't
interesting.
it?
Yeah. Having said that, though, the interesting thing is that you started with a very specific thing, which maybe dates quickly, but it kind of gave you your foot in the door. So let's talk about that, because I mean, I know this your third principle here is kind of, I guess we're talking really in the area of reinvesting your proceeds or building on what you've done. So tell me a bit about how you went from your was it Instagram power and sort of leveraged that gradually into more evergreen stuff.
It's a good question. And the first thing I started doing, my first foray into being a teacher educator, was a blog called marketingonpinterest.com. Still out there. You can go look at it. It's so dated and so ugly now, um, but there it was. And that turned into a book deal with McGraw-Hill. And so the third point here in my little, reinvesting your proceeds is understand how to leverage a small win into a snowball. And I don't care how small the win is. I mean, if you're making $10 a month off a course that you publish, or proceeds from a YouTube video, or a Kindle book or something like that, the idea here is, how do you reinvest that into your education business? And it's a very straightforward principle. I call this traffic stacking. We've talked about this before. So, and you can do this regardless of the modality and regardless of the marketplace, or platform you publish on. So let's just say, for example, you do an ebook on Kindle, and you make, let's say, $40 a month in ongoing royalty payments. You can take that $40 and set up a Google ad for the related key phrases, and you can then send traffic to your own book on Amazon. And that's called traffic stacking. And the reason you do that is because it will blow up the bestseller ranking on Amazon for your book. Or you could just spend the money on Amazon through AMS or Amazon advertising to blow up your book. And in effectively, you're then taking that $40 and not putting it in your pocket as profit. You're doubling down on your venture. And you're saying, I only make $40, but I'm just going to spend it, promoting my thing I've got. Doing that initial step by itself will lead you to a snowball that will continue to compound. I know that, you've mentioned some of my things that I would call successes, but honestly, when I started this, man, when I started writing in 2011, it's not very profitable straight away. There's not a lot of money. Even a book deal from McGraw-Hill, they gave me a $5,000 advance. It wasn't a lot of money. So in fact, I think it was $2,500 as advance, and then on completion of the manuscript, it was $2,500 more. It's not a lot of money, even though it was in Barnes and Noble and that kind of thing. So, but the idea of reinvesting is really, really, the trick. And that traffic stacking, you learn to do that, and then you're in the game. And regardless of how good or bad you think you are, or your own insecurities around, comparing yourself to others, just get in the game and just start to invest in your own business. And those steps will lead you to bigger and bigger outcomes. And I'm glad I continue to do that from 2011 through today. Kyle and I have an educational business that has 5 solid revenue streams. And it's a successful business, and it includes software, small group coaching, one-on-one coaching, done for you services, ebooks, educational events, and on and on. And so the revenue streams sort of compound and grow, and you learn over time. But the core thesis is, if I make, $30 or $40 this next month, what am I doing? And I guess I would say it this way: what is the highest and best use of those dollars to help grow your educational business? And so that's the way to think about this. And hopefully that's helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's very inspiring stuff, man. I just think about myself probably early in 2011, doing a lot of research about writing stuff about stuff that I had degrees in, multiple degrees in music, and always freaking myself out by just kind of doubting myself. Whereas you did, the difference is that, I guess, 2 things. First of all, you were maybe in a more cutting edge thing, which maybe dates quickly, which is a downside. But on the other hand, it was current and therefore in demand, and somebody approached you. But then also, maybe it's a blend between your personality and the fact that you got somebody approached you who is a serious, legit, a very big name business publisher, McGraw-Hill. But nevertheless, you actually got on with it. And I suppose there's a big lesson there that I think we can make our journey into any form of business creation, including but not limited to digital in the broader sense, i.e. e-commerce, digital products, as you said, artificial distinction anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But we could really slow it down a heck of a lot by not getting out there and being
Yeah.
willing to have people
Yeah.
say, this sucks, or I love
Mm-hmm.
this actually more than you think I was going to.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's a great reminder that, because I think that's one of the pieces of head trash that gets in our way a lot. It's
Yeah.
not even starting because we prejudge what the market needs
That's right.
by what we think about ourselves. And,
Yeah.
that can vary.
I'd love you just, kind of open the next topic for me in this conversation, which is what are the fears and constraints?
Yeah.
Fear, uncertainty, and doubt in people's minds. And so if you're watching with us live, love to have you just put in any fear, uncertainty, or doubt that is stopping you from taking the next step. And, Michael, you just expressed, one of those things. All of us as content creators we cannot do it without comparing ourselves to what else is already out there. And that unlocks a whole set of uncertainties, insecurities, fear, and comparison challenges. And we can get in our own head. And I guess the reason, for those who haven't heard my original story about my blog, I got really mad, I guess, originally by going to one of my senior leaders at the place I worked and telling her about a book idea. And she basically shot it down over a lunch, she just deconstructed the idea for me. Like, here's how all of that's a bad idea. And I walked away from that lunch with just this ironclad will that no one was ever going to stop me from doing what I thought was a good educational content idea. Why would I allow a gatekeeper to stop me? And so that didn't mean I had any skill at doing any of the work. I just had a determination that I was not going to allow someone to tell me what could or couldn't be done in that regard. And so then I just started blogging, WordPress blog, just a generic WordPress blog. And marketing on Pinterest was super hot. And I was doing it, and I knew that no one else was talking about it yet. And so I just started blogging, and in over vacation for a 2-week period, I wrote 24 blog posts. And were they the most amazing blog posts ever? No. But what happened was so few people were writing about marketing on Pinterest that people started, when they were Googling marketing on Pinterest, my blog was just ranking. And one of the people who Googled was an author who was under contract to write a book about Pinterest. And she reached out and said, I don't know enough about this topic. You seem to be the online expert. Well, I was an online expert because I had written 24 articles in 2 weeks and no one else was talking about it. And so that was just the door that, the work that unlocked the door. And the work was short blog articles. And I would really encourage everybody who's doing this to, find a way to get in the game, even if it's in a micro content way, micro publishing way. And to stop yourself from just the pent up huge course, I'm going to create in the future mindset, So what does that unlock for you, Michael? Other fears or concerns or issues you think, or let's ask the audience as well.
Thank you for therapizing my fears around this. But I do think it's going to reflect what a lot of people that I've spoken to over the years have got the same things. I mean, first of all, your story is so inspiring. What I really like about it is it started off with a rejection. And instead of saying, I accept your judgment, you went the opposite, typical entrepreneur. You went, I am now determined to make this happen. And that little spark of, I remember years ago, like one of my favorite sort of musicians in the world who was teaching me, sort of said to me jokingly, oh, you're unemployable. I thought, yeah, maybe that's not so joking. I mean, I'm kind of unemployable because at some point I know what I think is right. I'm just going to do it. No, I'm not going to let the world prove me wrong rather than the boss. And I think maybe you have to have that streak in you. But I really love the fact that you went vigorously in the opposite direction. And then I guess there's a degree of luck and there's a degree of maybe an instinct that you were going into an area that you were intrigued by because it was new and working for you. And therefore that kind of organically led to that answer to the question I posed earlier, which is how much research should we do? You were kind of drawn to the new and cutting edge anyway at that point. So maybe there's something in that. We've discussed the fact that it isn't evergreen, but I guess starting is maybe the most important thing. And you can iterate from that point, right?
That's absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely right. Starting is crucial, and starting in a small and achievable way is it'll feel like a huge milestone, even though it's just a small, like it's just a WordPress.com blog. So what? It's a huge milestone. And so take those wins, take those milestones, and and expound on them. And I think you'll be off to the races, you know.
The
So,
final thing that I'm going to take from that before I'd love to get a summary of these steps, which is, first of all, fantastic conversation, man. Really great. But SEO is not dead. One of the people that I know,
mhm,
Ashley Pierce, he was an Amazon seller, had a horrible 2020 because he was in the travel space and spent a lot of that time that he'd been kind of developing over a few years a team of people doing SEO work, and has
mhm,
since been doing a lot of work for the other people in the mastermind, and now much more broadly. Um, a sort of agency for SEO. But the thing is, it's some SEO stuff he's doing is blowing up. I mean,
mhm.
as you know, iOS 14 affects Facebook ads
Yeah,
and the ability to appear on Google Edge and various other devices. SEO has never really gone out of fashion, just like email, but it's coming back in. I mean, he's certainly getting incredible results
yeah,
for some some clients and for himself now. And
yeah,
I just think writing really great content for a really specific audience is never going to go wrong. And a blog is a wonderful place to start because there's no
yeah,
barrier. It's not like you have to plan a whole book out, which for me is very worrying. My
yeah,
version is podcasting, where I've done what 600-700 episodes now. It's a comfort zone for me. But I guess
yeah.
for somebody else, it may well be sitting down and writing a blog article, but it's so doable and it still works. That's the magic of it, right?
Well, and there's new twists and iterations to the tools online all the time.
True.
Substack is a new platform that allows you to write newsletters for subscription. So
Hmm.
people subscribe to get your newsletter for a couple bucks or whatever. There are people minting money, whatever the phrase is, on Substack. So it's an interesting new platform, and there are always these new tools, and that's the interesting part of it. So I would just say, in summation, on the fear topic, before we finally wrap up and bring this conversation to a close, identify what's stopping you in your mind, and realize that barrier is something you have to get leverage on yourself on. And by that I mean, if you're over analyzing it and not taking action, get an accountability partner. If you're actually doing stuff shoddily too quickly, get a coach. Have somebody say, "Hey, that really stinks, and let me show you how to do it better." And whatever it is, I mean, whatever mental barrier is preventing you from taking your best steps forward with this stuff, figure it out and improve. Well, there's great comments popping in here, and I want to just make sure we cover them. So, Patrick said, "Great info, guys. I want to tell sprinters everything I know about starting from sprint blocks." Patrick, that is fantastic, man. That's YouTube gold.
Hmm.
That is YouTube gold. And so there you go. But there's many other modalities that you could do with that, and I love that. Um, Mark said, "Thanks for the valuable insights. Great points." Kimberly said, when she asked me a question, when you wrote those 24 posts for Pinterest, did you have any idea that you'd be one day doing this kind of entrepreneurial work full time? I honestly could never have imagined. All I knew was I really wanted to write, and somebody had told me I couldn't write in the way I wanted to. And I said to myself, I'm going to find a different way to do writing. And I took the first appropriate opportunity I could find and figure out. And it's led to a really fun decade. I get to spend 10 years now of spending time and energy on this. And it's become not only, profitable and monetarily meaningful, but it's also really super enjoyable. And so, I could have never imagined. I could not have imagined that I would have books in Barnes and Noble and in the bookstores around the world, and translated into other languages for Brazilians and people in India, and on and on and on. And it's just an incredible honor, and I feel blessed. But it wasn't luck; it was both luck and I just took the steps, and so it's a combo.
Yeah, it's always a combo, I guess. But I guess it's also the thing that's coming out of this is the opposite to what I was saying to somebody yesterday who wants to start with a unique physical custom product. Please don't do this if you are new to the game. Whereas with digital products, it feels like the opposite advice is appropriate, which is don't
Yeah.
overanalyze, just start, because the downside is so little. I mean, it's a
Hmm.
downside, upside, risk, reward analysis. It's completely different, even though they're both about creating
Yeah.
something new that didn't exist.
Yeah.
There is so little risk in writing a few blog articles. I guess the worst risk is that you write them and nobody sees them, but at least you've articulated your thoughts very clearly
I'll
and you've
tell
honed
you.
your skills as a writer, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll tell you why you have to do it that way. Because what's in your mind in terms of your self-judgment of your work compared to what's reality is insanely different.
Yeah.
And what happens with educational content is the people who think they're horrible at it and it's just the worst and it stinks and it's not even worth publishing. When those people, put it out there, it's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, and that's frequently sort of a story. It's like you're so harsh on yourself and you're so unkind to your work. You're like the biggest jerk boss ever to yourself. But then when you put it out, other people are like, "What are you talking about? This is gold." Or there's the other reality, which is you think you're amazing. You think it's all you're the most genius of all time, and you put it out there and you get 1-star reviews. And so you have to treat it like a catalog business. You have to publish a lot because you have to get better at reality. And not just your own mind reality, but the reality of what customers think. And the only way you do that is by putting it out there and watching to see how many reviews did it get? What are people saying? Is it actually helpful? Is it getting traction in the marketplace? And so the iterative nature of that, offering and then reviews and responses, offering and then reviews and responses, offering and then reviews and responses, tunes you up. I mean, it gets you to a place where you're like, okay, I get it. I stink at this stuff in a way, or I take this person's point, or the harsh, the Vine voice on Amazon, those reviewers that are just like, they just really give it to you.
They
that
do.
it helps you. It's good for you. It's like reality check, and so I think that's why you've got to approach this as an iterative way and get out there early, because maybe you're amazing at it. Maybe, maybe your first whack at it will be a home run, grand slam, amazing, multi-million-dollar book. You don't know. You really don't know.
I love your optimism, man. You're definitely California born. I can hear it in it. I really like it. We need that in Britain because you've got cynics like me, hanging around too much and being down on stuff. This is great, and I'm personally really fired up and motivated by this conversation. It's fantastic. I'm going on vacation next week, and take my trusty Chromebook with me and whack out some content just to kind of get into the practice of it. I think listen, my background as a pianist and before that conductor and horn player and everything else tells me that practice is really essential. It's amazing how bad you are going to be at the piano first time, or guitar, or anything you like. In my experience of teaching people, sometimes for a long time, but it's amazing how good you can get if you chip away at it every day for a long time. It really, the compounding nature of skill is one of those things where you cannot see day to day how good you're getting. But if you look back after 5 years, you go, wow, that is so different. And I guess what you're saying is to hone these skills over time and to be brave about it, which is just great advice, man. Can you summarize these wonderful steps that you put together? I mean, this has been a far-reaching conversation. It's fantastic. Let's just bring it back home.
3 simple steps. Number 1, identify your unique ability and outline your knowledge. Number 2, identify the best platform and modality and learn it. Number 3, reinvest your proceeds into your educational business. There you go.
Sounds so simple.
It sounds so simple.
It does.
It's a big game, man. I'll tell you one thing. After doing it for a decade, I still have huge goals for myself that I've never achieved, and all of us will. And that's the fun of it. It is a big old game.
Yeah, and shoot for the stars and accept the moon or something like that, right? It's always good to be ambitious. I think that, also if you're ambitious, there's an energy that comes from that other people pick up on. I think it's great to have ridiculously high goals for yourself somehow. I think that's exciting. So I'm with you on that. So if people want to work with you, obviously you've worked with someone in a more sort of concrete terms, worked with some very successful, I was going to say physical product-based business owners, but actually that's an artificial constraint, and you've helped them to add digital products, which has really helped them. So if people want to get help with that, then how do they work with you and Kyle on that stuff?
I feel embarrassed to say, but I don't really have any coaching or consulting or groups even for people who are interested in educational content. I've never taught the topic which I'm embarrassed to say, but I do have one-on-one coaching and small groups related to e-commerce generally. You can find those at winningonshopify.com. And maybe I need to do a course or training, or turn this little outline into a book or something like that on how to make educational content. I do love it. It's just so fun. So
I would say more than maybe from what we've discussed today. I'm knowing you really well.
Yeah.
The thing is, a lot of people writing this stuff, but you've actually been doing it for years, very, very successfully. So I would 100% endorse that. If you write that book, I'll be first in line, and I think a lot of people listening will be as well. So, final thing to say, guys, is if you're enjoying the show, obviously we always want you to subscribe, because then you get more great content delivered to your podcast player of choice. But we're going to reward you for it until the end of July. And Jason, stop me if I'm saying something wrong. We've got a subscription contest. So you just go to www.contest.theecommerceleader.com. There's no S in contest, so www.contest.theecommerceleader.com, and you can win a Visa gift card of $250 value. And if you're in Britain, we'll figure it out. I mean, read the small print. I'm not an expert in competition law
Void where
in the
prohibited.
UK or anywhere else you're listening, or Australia, or wherever else you may be. But
Yeah.
if we can, we'll certainly make sure that we get the money to you. And either which way, we'd love you to subscribe and be passionate about the content.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, man. This has been a great conversation, and it's been encouraging to me to hear people's feedback. And thank you for all the comments as well in the chats. Really appreciate everybody's perspective on this. So good time.
Excellent. Yeah, great stuff. So very inspiring. And guys, if you like me are inspired, go and get writing, or whatever form of creation, go and get videoing, and let's prove Jason right with his thesis.
There you go. All right, buddy. See you. Okay, that's the end of our podcast, friends. Thanks for hanging out with us live. Wow, this turned into a long conversation. This was really fun.
Yeah.
And so we'll break this into a 2-part podcast that'll be published in a couple of weeks on the podcast players. And so, Michael, thank you for hanging out with me here. And thank you, everybody, for the comments and the chat as well. Great stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right, bye, everybody. We're going to hang up and have a wonderful Sunday.